So this video is a different type of project video because it's my project. So one of the things that I've worked on is this, a new Binnacle cover. So hope you enjoy the video. So there's a few things that you're going to need before you start this project. You need a half decent sewing machine. What I mean by that is you need something very robust. So this is an old machine. It's a Jones. It's a 568. I think they're also known as a sailmaker. Extremely heavy. However, this machine is probably at its limit with, I would say, 4 pieces of sunbrella. It doesn't like plastic very much. That seems to be a bit of an issue. So the way that I've got this machine set up is I obviously have a large spool, which is one of these. This is nylon, quite a heavy duty nylon. It's UV resistant thread. I think there's a common understanding really that the thread tends to give up before the material does. So we've got that in there, and it's on a spool reel at the back. So if you're going to use a spool reel, if you're not used to using them, if you're just doing home sewing, you might not necessarily use them. Make sure that this is pointing in direction of the loop as to where it's going to go, and then feed the rest of it through as normal. Bobbins. I have used 4 bobbins to sew this machine. This is seam tape, waterproof seam tape. I used it on the edges for a little bit of reinforcement. A lot of YouTube videos, tutorials don't use this on the Binnacle covers at all. Ours had some reinforcement on, so I wanted to use it. I used it on a few seams, but it was a bit of a pain, so we abandoned that one. Okay, this is basin tape. This particular basin tape is rubbish. It's not very good at all. So again, got so far through the project and decided not to use it. However, if you've got a good one, one that you know obviously works really well, super handy for this project. I have moved away from pins and use these little clips, super cheap off Amazon, rather than pinning the material. One of the things they are very grippy as well, so they do hold the fabric really well. With this particular material, because it is so heavy, what I've found is where I've used pins in the past, it actually leaves pinholes. So I've opted for those instead. This is a great tool. It's for your sewing machine and it helps you to just hold everything in place. You can stick it pretty much wherever you want. It's just got a magnet on the bottom and a little clip. And essentially you can press it and helps you to feed your material through. This is a little tensioning gauge, so you can have it really tight or just a little bit. And it helps to just keep it in line. Foot plates on some sewing machines, and I have got one as well, have measurements on there. But for big stuff, I prefer to use this because it helps me hold it at the foot. And obviously I can use the material down here, so super handy. I think they're about £6 off Amazon. I've actually got 2 of them, so that's great. So needles I've used 110/18, very heavy needles. Really good. That's the material, that's the needle to use. I used 3 needles. They blunt quite quickly, but these are a cheaper version, let's say. If you don't have one of these, you need one. This is a little pick. It's what I use to unpick my template. So we unpick the original Binnacle cover. This basically just slips under the stitch and you just pop it and the stitch will break and then you can unpick it. It's a great little tool. Alternatively, you can use scissors, but it's not quite as good. Now, these are scissors that I would recommend. They are for material. They're by Guggenheim. They're not the cheapest scissors, but super sharp, really great, quite heavy duty fabric scissors. I have a cutting mat. I actually have 2 of these. Mine's A1, so 60 centimetres by 90 centimetres. These are ridiculously expensive, I think, for what they are. I mean, it's just going to get destroyed. You can see all of the marks in here. It's actually off the hot knife. I got mine off Temu. I got 2 of them because I know full well that I just destroy them. So, and I think they were about £15, £11, something like that. Yeah, but great, just give you a little bit done. You've seen the rope cutter in action. I've spoke quite a bit about that. This was an alternative to the one that Sailrite use over in America. I do really like the Sailrite tutorials. They're really, really helpful. This was slightly different to their standard tutorial because we were using our own template, but really, really helpful. Quite expensive to get this stuff over to us in the UK, and this was one that somebody was recommending, so again, really, really good. We didn't use umbrella fabric because it's super expensive. We used something else. I think it's called Sudella, Sudel, something like that. I'll put a link in there, and that was from Pro Fabrics, and it's about £20 a metre. And then at that particular shop you get a discount when you go over 5 metres. I ordered 5 metres on a roll, and the roll is 150 centimetres deep, so 150 centimetres by 5 metres. I have a lot of fabric left over, but to be honest, you can always use it. I say in the other part of the video, just hang it, don't fold it. This material doesn't particularly like being folded, so just hang that up. And oh, one more thing that I would suggest. The biggest rulers you can find. Metal rulers, and obviously I've got a slightly smaller one there, but these are great. They're also great as well for just creasing this material, so lots and lots of pressure just to get the creases in to help you run it through the machine. And that is everything that you're going to need. What I've got is I've got our old Binnacle cover, which I have lovingly unpicked, and I'll show you what I used for unpicking, and place that over a sheet of this material. I'm just going to trim it down a little bit before marking it out, and then I'll use the cutter to go around. They are unbelievably sharp. So this material, it does have 2 sides to it. So I'm not sure if you'll pick that up on camera, but there is a matte and a slightly shiny side. All of the markings obviously go on the matte side, unless that's the side you want people to see. Chalk marker 50 is what I use. And when we are going over this, you just need to make sure that because this is an old one, what happens when you lay your template out is it's curling over. So you've got 2 options here. You can either put a little bit of tape, just double-sided tape, just to hold it nice and flat. Ours isn't too bad. We do have a few areas that are curling, so what I typically do is I will just hold it down to make sure that I get a nice neat line as close to it as I can. Take that right into the corner. You'll see here that there is a little fold, so just go as far into that fold as you can, and then just bring it back out again. Make sure that you have this nice and flat so you get right to the edge, otherwise your material is going to be slightly undersized. There is quite a lot to play with in terms of what I've done here, but if you are really cutting it exactly to size, it will be slightly over, so just bear that in mind. Try and keep it as accurate as possible. Get slightly closer in, so you hold the buzzer for a couple of seconds, line yourself up. You need to press quite hard, so you will need a mat under your cloth. It's very, very smoky. So we did our template, we used our template and created our lines, and I'm just following those lines around to just give us our cut. The bigger the table, the better. But if, like me, you're not living in a mansion, then you just have to use the space that we've got and try and make everything fit, which I think is fair enough. You can see as well here, just little bit light on it. There we go. It's very smoky, but it cuts really nice, to be honest. So far, so good. So for my marking, I use a chalk marker pen. You can, of course, just use a normal sort of chalk pencil that you do for sewing. There's no particular reason why I use a chalk marker. It does leave a bigger line, it's a bit easier to see. I'm not too bothered about the white marks on the inside, but this does just wash off if you need to. Are you concerned about that? All of these little bits I keep because they're good for just testing, practicing, and I keep them all as well. And then when I set my sewing machine up later, which I'll show you, I use it just to run through the material. I know people keep scraps of material, but for me, on a job like this, I think it's important that you use the material, you tension to the material you're going to use, rather than just another piece of scrap material, because it isn't the easiest material to work with. It does have the coating, it's quite thick, so you want to get it set up for this material. So any little offcuts that you've got, keep them. Okay, so we've got this central part. This is the bit that goes over the wheel, and it's where the zip's going to go. So what I've done is I've marked approximately 2 inches from the bottom. That's where the zip's going to finish. You can see the white lines on there. And then what you might be able to see is I've got a pencil mark going right up the middle. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to go back for our hot knife, and we're just going to cut right down that line. And then we'll pull it forward and we'll go up again. So same principle as before. Try and keep it nice and as straight as we can. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to release this. And these little tools are great. These are off Amazon, and they're actually for your sewing machine. So you'll see when we take the fabric over to the machine, it has a strong magnet, it clicks on, and then it's just got a little holder. And what I do to hold this in place is I've got a very long metal ruler that I showed before. It's sort of 69 centimetres that I put underneath my cutting mat and just use this to hold it in place. And it works great. So that's what we do. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to measure from this seam. We're going to measure 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to draw a line just down from that, and that matches up to our zip. So just as close to the edge as you can possibly get. This is basting tape. It's basically a double-sided sticky tape, and it's going to help us to keep our zip in place. It's also going to help us to fold over some hems, and that will just hold everything in place just a little bit easier. If we're still not very secure when we are hemming, because like I said, this is very rigid, very quite thick material, then I will probably pin these in place. But let's see how we got on. What we've got now is obviously these are still stuck down. These are my little clips. rather than just using pins, just to see if I can get that to stick a little bit better for me. It's not great. I think it's maybe the tape combined with the material. I've used a ruler to really try and scour in those edges. Not quite working. Okay, so we want our zip going from the bottom up, so we're going to do it, almost feels like the wrong way around. I've taped each side, as you can see, just to help me, and I'm going to remove these little hooks, and hopefully this should just sit very, very nicely on there if everything we've done is correct. So this is a bit of a moment of truth. Let's see how we get on. Let's have a look. What we've got here are going to be our little stoppers. So I basically cut sort of a 3-inch piece of scrap material, folded it in half to create this little stopper. And what I'm going to do now is just open our teeth a little bit. So I've added my stoppers to the ends, just turn them over. The basting tape, as I said before, just is not holding this material at all, so I've resorted to pinning it. But essentially that's what it looks like, so it's a really good fit. Obviously once that's stitched down, it's going to cover it really, really well. For now, all we're trying to do is to just hold it in place. The next thing we want to do then is we're going to flip it over, and we're going to use Velcro. This comes in two. We've got hooks and loops. So the fluffy one is the loops, and we're going to use that first, and then we'll use our hooks a little bit later. So, I mean, Velcro, I think, is a brand name, so anything, anything basically, I would know it is Velcro, but hooks and loops, that's what we're going to use next. So I'm really happy with how that's looking so far. You can see the pins in there amongst, well, that's actually dog hair, so let's not worry too much about that. And I said before about the Velcro, so we're going to use the hooks, we're going to cut this in half, and we're going to put one down this side like this. And we're doing that because I'm changing the design ever so slightly of our original cover, because I'd like a bigger flap to actually go over this. These zips and things, they're not always the most resistant, let's say, in the sort of the marine conditions, although it is a marine zip. But either way, I also thought it just looked a bit nicer, to be honest, aesthetically. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to stick this in place. Doesn't really matter what side it's going to be on, but I'm going to stick this down, stick this in place, and then we're going to be ready to do the first lot of stitching. So I'm going to use this little bit of scrap material. We need to rake some reinforcement to go up over here. So I'm just going to do that with this, I think, which is not straight at all, but let's just give that a bit of a straight look for us. Seem a bit extreme, but it's the only way I've found that I can really get it to stick is to be really quite brutal and fold the creases in. Some of these little things, like the little stoppers at the bottom, this reinforcement at the top, I'm a bit concerned about how the Jones sewing machine is going to handle it, because it's very, very thick. So I'm going to upgrade my needles, that's for sure. So I'll go for the biggest one, 110 by 18 I think is what I'll go for. So I'll show you that set up a little bit later as well. the Jones is managing better than I am, that's for sure. But, he's doing really nice. Obviously trying to go slow, very slow.
We'll let you concentrate.
This has turned out great. And the next thing now we need to do is we need to create the flap that folds over. So, one of the larger pieces of scrap material, and I've cut it the same length as the zip and give myself sort of 4.5 inches just measured out there. No need to hot knife this one because it's all of the edges are going to be folded, so we don't need to worry about that, which is quite a good thing because it's getting quite late and it does smell. So we're going to cut down here and then we're going to fold the edges in. We're going to create a nice flap. We're also going to stick our hooks, the Velcro hooks, onto the side of this as well. So okay, so the flap's done. This is a new day. So I'll just show you how this works. Really solid flap. I just preferred it to leaving just a bit of material over. So that's gone in really well. A few little tips with this one. It's very thick. So this is absolutely at the limit of Jonesy, the sewing machine. So the next set of covers are the ones that I showed when we were making the template. So what we need to do with these, just turn it around the right way. So these edges here, they stick together like so. So we're going to put some little creases in them. We're going to get them pinned into place. So again, this was just using the template, cutting across with the hot knife. You can see that looks great. Now, what I do have, just to help with these seams, we do have some seam tape, waterproof seam tape. Now, I've noticed not a lot of people seem to use this. However, on our Binnacle cover, the one that I've lovingly destroyed, it did have it on. And essentially this was right over the edge. And it was just stitched on. So it had some sort of membrane, some sort of tape on there. So I'm going to have a little look and see if I think we need it. I'm not 100% sure we do, to be perfectly honest, but we'll give that a try in a minute and see how we get on. So what I'm going to do is start making the folds for these. Making sure that these edges sit nice. Okay, that sounds looking pretty good. What I'm going to do, just to hold it and check I can get it in place, is I'm just going to put some little clips. I think I mentioned these little clips before. They're brilliant, really, really good. Much better than having to use pins. Although I'm sure some people will definitely prefer pins. And that's okay, whatever works for you. pins I always think do leave a little bit of a mark, so we're not going to use pins. One thing I would say about using pins on here actually is because this material is very stiff, I actually think pins would leave quite a few holes, but when I did the zip, I did use pins. Let's put a few more clips on. I'm not going to start sewing this yet. I'm going to actually do the other side as well. I want to just understand how it all fits together and make sure that there's going to be no surprises, because like I said, this material feels very different to the other material. I honestly think it's just because that other material is so old. It really is old, so let's just make sure we have enough in that. That is actually going to be pretty nice. Okay, great. Okay, so just going to do a little bit of stitching. I've put the waterproof membrane on. Jonesy's struggling a little bit just to get through the plastic. My needle's still quite sharp, so just give it a little bit of a helping hand to just go through that. Once it's going, it's okay. My cut on this side with the hot knife is a little bit wonky, so I've tried to correct it within the crease. So I'm just going to have to do this and see how it looks when we're finished. I think it will look okay, but we'll give it a try now. So I'm going to do a little bit of reversing. Try and just pull the plastic hem down as much as we can. As you can see, that's great. Perfect. I really wouldn't be too afraid of, if there's a few little bits that haven't quite stitched properly, or you're having to pull it to manoeuvre it a little bit on the inside. You're not going to see the inside at the end of the day, so I really wouldn't worry too much about it. I think you can correct it on the inside. You can pull the hems up a little bit if you need to. When you actually flip it over, the outside still has these great creases in, so that's all we can do. And now I'm just going to repeat that for this side, and then we'll look at joining them together. Okay, so we've got the two pieces joined together. You can see we've put that in there, nicely sealed. So when you're stitching big material like this, it puckers. As you run it through the machine, you get little bumps. I'll try and show you on the next piece. Just stitch through them, just stitch over them, because the line actually, this is the area here where I had quite a lot. And it looks great. Again, from the outside, don't worry too much about it. Yeah, absolutely great. So the next thing now is we need to just get the door on, and then we need to think about putting the nice binding along the bottom. Front's all stitched on. That's all looking great, and I've just been working on the hem. So I've had, I was in two minds whether to put binding along the bottom like the original one, or to just hem it under. And I think we think the hem is just going to look a little bit neater, so I'm going to go with the hem. Usual script, fold over, peg, and then what I've done is I enlisted some willing volunteers to just hold it for me, and just rest the base on the floor so that I can try and make sure that it's all the same sort of level. Because the line isn't perfectly straight, trying to measure it at this stage probably a little bit difficult, so I'm just going to just done it by eye, and it should look fine. Okay, great. Okay, so I've just hemmed the bottom. That's what it looks like, so it matches on the edges that you're going to see. And I've just gone through and hemmed that, and just a few little bits of cotton sticking out. I'm just going to tidy them up. Again, I've hemmed the edges nice and flat. Yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased with it, to be honest.